The storm barreled in like a scene from a blockbuster disaster flick. Icy winds screaming through the trees, snow slashing sideways in thick sheets, and temperatures plummeting so fast the pipes seemed to tremble in fear. While most of the neighborhood had either fled south or barricaded themselves with emergency supplies and firewood, I was still settling into my new place on Oakwood Drive. Boxes remained unpacked, street names were a blur, and I was adjusting to the eerie perfection of a community that felt too pristine to be genuine. On the second day of the freeze, when power lines drooped and even the toughest cars gave up, a knock came at my door. It was Jake, my neighbor from across the street, who said, "If you see water anywhere, it's not rain, it's a pipe bursting." His words stuck with me, so I spent the afternoon inspecting my own house, letting faucets drip and ensuring the heat held steady. That's when I noticed it. Beyond my frost-coated fence, water trickled down the side of my next-door neighbor's foundation, steam rising as it hit the snow. A pipe had clearly burst inside, and no one was home to stop it. That house belonged to Linda. We weren't exactly close-ish, only spoken to me once, the day I moved in with a curt "appearances matter," while eyeing my trash cans. I'd be lying if I said I didn't consider letting the water freeze and wreak havoc, a petty jab at her unspoken reign over the block. But I couldn't. Despite her coldness, despite how she made me feel like an outsider, I knew the sting of returning to a ruined home. Maybe I just wasn't built to ignore someone else's disaster, even if they'd never lift a finger for me. So I grabbed a flashlight and wrench, trudging through the snow to her place, my pulse racing not from the cold, but from how this might look, a stranger poking around a house during a blackout. I shoved the thought aside and tracked the sound of gushing water to a utility door left slightly ajar, just enough for the freeze to sneak in. Inside, a copper pipe had split wide open, water flooding the floor and creeping toward electrical outlets. I called Linda twice, left voicemails, even emailed her, no response. So I made a call. I pried the door open wider with a crowbar I'd brought for emergencies, slipped in and shut off the main valve. Then I scrambled, grabbing towels, tarps, and buckets to mop up the mess before it ruined everything. The whole time I thought, she's going to lose it when she finds out, she'll accuse me of something wild. But I kept going, working for 2 hours until the leak slowed, the damage was under control, and the temperature stabilized. I even plugged in a space heater in a dry corner, safely grounded, to keep the pipes from refreezing. When I stepped back, surveying the chaos, I'd tamed, soggy towels, puddles, signs of my Union VY TED entry dread flickered. Linda wouldn't care that I'd saved her house, she'd care that I'd breached her domain without permission. Still, I wrote a detailed note explaining what I'd done, why I'd done it, how I tried to reach her, and that I'd cover a locksmith if needed. I taped it to her kitchen table under a heavy glass vase filled with decorative stones and left, securing the back door as best I could. My heart pounded not from fear of arrest, but from knowing kindness can be mistaken for meddling, and I didn't need my fresh start marred by a scandal. Yet a hopeful part of me thought she'd get it once she saw the EVY denke, heard the messages, realized her home was intact because I'd stepped up. Days later, the storm eased, the ice melted, and Linda returned, suitcase in hand, sunglasses perched like a tiara. From my porch, I watched her freeze in her driveway, staring at her door before storming inside. I braced for her knock, maybe a thank you or at least a question. Instead, a police cruiser rolled up within 24 hours, and I knew I'd misjudged how this would play out. For the next 3 days, I slipped back into Linda's house through that same utility door, now rigged with a makeshift latch I'd crafted from scrap metal. Each VY sit came with that same tightness in my chest, doing the right thing while knowing if she caught me, my intentions wouldn't matter. In her world, anything unauthorized was a crime, especially from someone like me, already pegged as a disruptor. But I wasn't after praise or forgiveness. I'd seen homes rot from water damage, and Linda's carelessness leaving the hatch unlocked, pipes undrained before jetting off to California, hinted at a pattern that'd end in ruin unless someone intervened. So I returned with fans, a borrowed dehumidifier, rubber boots and gloves, scrubbing out murky water pooling in corners. On the second trip, I found mold sprouting near her furnace, black and spreading. I cut it out, bagged it, bleached the area, and patched it with a board from my garage. By the third day, the house smelled of dry air and cleaner, not mildew. The note I'd left was gone, maybe lost, tossed, or most likely read and ignored. Acknowledging help, especially from me, would crack her facade of control. That night, I left a second note, short and to the point. House is dry. Mold's gone. Pipes patched, need pro replacement. Sorry for entering. Tried contacting you. did what I thought was right. I tucked it in an envelope marked urgent with plumber receipts and a materials list, no strings attached. Walking home under a thawing sky, I felt certain this quiet act might never be recognized for what it was, and that was okay, until it wasn't. Less than a day later, as I prepped coffee and soup, a squad car pulled into my drive. 2 officers, one young, one seasoned, stepped out, faces neutral but firm. When they said suspicious entry, I knew exactly what was up. Linda had returned, seen the door off its hinges, spotted signs of my work, and without reading my notes or checking her messages, assumed the worst. They asked if I'd been inside her home. Yes, I said, and their stances shifted. But when I explained the leak, my failed attempts to reach her, and how I documented it all, the older officer's eyes softened, not suspicion, but recognition, like he'd seen this before. A good deed twisted by a snap judgment. Got proof? He asked. I nodded, fetched photos, the plumber's invoice, even the moldy drywall I'd bagged. As their VYU'd it, the tension eased from hostile to curious. After a few calls, they said I wasn't under arrest, not yet, but a report would be filed. Across the street, Linda shrieked through her screen door. Pacing, pointing, demanding justice, claiming I'd VYO'd her space, her safety. It was bizarre being cast as the bad guy for SAVYing her home. Worse were the neighbors peering from windows, stepping onto porches, eyeing the cop car like I'd been caught robbing the place. I didn't argue as the officers left. I just went inside, shut the door, and sat in silence, the weight of it all pressing down. Part of me wanted to storm over, shove the EVY Denke in her face, demand she explain her blindness, her arrogance. But I didn't. Linda didn't want truth. She wanted dominance. Gratitude to her was weakness. What she didn't know, what no one knew, was that I had it all on camera, me spotting the leak, entering her house, shutting off the water, drying the floor, timestamps included, plus records of my calls and texts. I hadn't shared it yet. I wasn't out to prove a point, just to help. But now, with her dragging in the law, turning the neighborhood against me, accusing me of a crime for an act of mercy, the game had changed. The storm was over, the pipes fixed, her house spared a hefty repair bill, and I'd gone back to my routine, hoping my part would fade away. I was wrong. While I'd been fixing a problem, Linda had been brewing one. Her accusations didn't just ripple, they exploded, rocking every porch, mailbox, and HO chat within blocks. She didn't stop at the police. She called an emergency HO meeting, bursting in with printed screenshots from her security cam, grainy shots of me entering her house, and a 3-page rant claiming I trespassed, tampered with her stuff, and weaponized tools to intimidate her. Some smirked at that last bit, but no one challenged her. That's how it worked in Linda's world: control through fear, order through outrage. Within a day, her tale spread like wildfire, whispers morphing me from helper to intruder, unstable, even ex-military. By the HOA meeting, the damage was done. I walked into the community center to sidelong glances, crossed arms, and uncertain nods from folks who'd once waved hello. Linda stood center stage, flanked by Susan and Margaret like a tribunal, reading her statement with dramatic flair, her horror at my unauthorized presence, how she felt unsafe in her sanctuary, how I'd threatened the neighborhood's security. I let her finish, let the gasp settle, the stares sharpen. Then, when she paused, expecting me to shrink, I stood, pulled out a folder, and handed the HOA chair copies of my letters dated and signed, plus screenshots of my emails, voicemail transcripts, and my own security footage showing me discovering the leak, knocking, and entering only after no response. Calmly I said, I didn't break into Linda's home, I kept it from breaking down. The room froze, grappling with the full story, not her fear-fueled version, but mine, rooted in EVY Denke and logic. Then Jake spoke up. I saw him that day, saw the steam, thought he was helping. Lisa, quiet till now, added, a plumber came the day Linda got back, said someone had already done most of the work. The tide turned. I shifted from me to Linda, her face paling, fingers fumbling through her papers for a rebuttal that didn't exist. Susan whispered something. Margaret looked away. The silence was deafening. The chair cleared his throat. Given the EVY Denke and witnesses, this was a misunderstanding. Linda snapped. Misunderstanding? He trespassed. But the chair cut in, firm, it was emergency aid. You didn't respond. You left a mess. He stopped a disaster, someone muttered, and saved your insurance, sparking uneasy laughs. Linda's narrative crumbled. She tried citing rules, boundaries, but no one bought it. Not after the receipts, the VY Deo, The realization she'd tried to VY Lifey the one person who'd acted with decency. As the meeting ended, people approached minute avoiding me now, but offering nods, handshakes, quiet apologies. Linda stormed out, her posse trailing like scattered leaves. I didn't feel triumphant, just steady. I hadn't done it for applause. But I learned something: truth doesn't always roar, it waits. And when it emerges, it doesn't just clear your name. It exposes what tried to bury you. Linda's grip on the neighborhood loosened not overnight, but in small cracks. People talked differently, not in hushed fear but casual honesty. Lisa started chatting on dog walks. Jake brought over beers, saying, "Knew you were solid, thanks for VYing it." I didn't need a parade, just proof that doing right still mattered, even when it looked wrong at first. Linda didn't relent right away. She posted vague HOA notices about boundaries and chaos, but Susan and Margaret drifted away, her echo chamber shrinking. Then a city letter hit every mailbox. The HOA was under re-VYW for overreach and false authority. I didn't file it, someone did, and it sparked an audit exposing Linda's pattern: intimidating non-HOA homes, misusing funds for unapproved flyers. Her myth unraveled in headlines and chats. She faded, not physically, her house still impeccable but socially. I'd see her through her window, motionless, a shadow of consequence. I didn't gloat. Her fall wasn't satisfying when you saw how fragile she'd always been. The neighborhood bloomed without her bold paint. Wild gardens, block parties she'd have squashed. One day, a box appeared on my porch, a new wrench set, an unsigned card saying, "You fixed what no one saw breaking." I see it now. I didn't flaunt it, their quiet surrender spoke louder than words. Soon, she showed up at a cleanup day, gloves on, head down, no clipboard. Something softened, not just in her, but in us all. I built a bench at the block's end, carved with for sitting, not judging. It became a hub. Kids played, neighbors met, and once, Linda sat there, coffee in hand, watching a street she no longer ruled. Spring came, and with it, a neighborhood reborn, not through rules but through people learning kindness outlasts control.